Good morning. I've got to just quickly send a little email to the accounts, and then I would like today to talk to you about the reasons why I feel that I got here. So, I mean, obviously, if you go back to my very first video, you'll learn of my habits, my journey, my story, if you like, where I sort of have come a long way from this sort of anorexia stage, etc., but there's still a long way to go. Just bear with me 1 second. Sorry about this, guys. Right. I'm just going to turn Alexa down, actually. 1 second. Because I can't hear myself think. Alexa, volume 2. Oh, that's much better. Okay, right. So today I'm going to talk to you about why I feel was the biggest crux as to why I got where I got. Okay, so first of all, if you haven't already, definitely worth watching that first video because it does give you quite an insight, to be honest. The biggest reason why I am here is losing LAYLA. So this video today I'm going to dedicate to her. She was my little girl and she unfortunately died just before I gave birth to her. So I am going to kind of go over, let me just send this quickly. Please mark me for my... Okay. Done. I'm all yours. Sorry, I should have done that first. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through what happened, and then maybe it might give you an idea of why I am the way that I am. So I've always been a perfectionist, and I've always been somebody who gets obsessed with things, you know. So for example, before I fell pregnant with LAYLA, I was kind of obsessed with my husband, you know, apart from the fact that he always used to sort of dangle a big fat carrot in front of my face every time he wanted me. My love for him was obsessive. I adored him, still do. So everything I did in life, whether it be going out for the weekend with the girls, I either ate or didn't eat at all. There was no kind of middle ground with me. If we went out for a drink, I wouldn't just have one, I would have a ton. And that's how I pretty much lived my life. Back then I smoked, and I didn't just smoke a little bit, I smoked a lot. You know, I was the one that always had the cigarettes because I was an all or nothing kind of person, still am. And I think that, again, that is a huge factor into this. But here's the thing. I fell pregnant with LAYLA quite unexpectedly. I was on the pill at the time. And me and my husband, Simon, had talked about potentially having kids in the future. But we had only been together, although we'd known each other for 5-6 years and we'd been playing ball games from the very beginning, we hadn't really fully committed. We were just new to being in a relationship properly, even though knowing each other for a while. So it was early doors. I unexpectedly fell pregnant with LAYLA. And I'll be completely frank, like, it scared the absolute shit out of me initially. We had barely any money. I panicked. And it was tough. Every waking minute we would be saving everything that we earn, as much as we possibly could. And to be honest, the pregnancy was great. My eating disorder, or once was, just went out the window, really. I'd always had a bit of a funny thing with food from a young age, but this was like the green light. So I packed on the pounds, and I stopped weighing myself after 4.5 stone that I gained. And this was only coming up to the sort of like the 32-week mark, so there was quite a little way to go yet. So I'm 32 weeks, I'm 4.5 stone larger. I had come closer to my mum at that time, which is a rarity. My mum and dad moved abroad when I was very young, when I was 16, and, you know, they hadn't really looked back. They took my brothers who wanted to go, and me who wanted to stay, you know, was kind of outcast a little bit. Probably explains why we don't talk now. But anyway, that's another story. So I fell pregnant with LAYLA, and I do remember throughout the pregnancy I spoke to my mum nearly every day, which was good, and we got really close, and it was coming up to the stage where I was leaving work. And I remember going in, it was my last couple of days I had left there. I worked right up until I popped. And I do remember I did continue to smoke. I'll hold my hands up. I did still smoke, although I reduced the smoking, I was still actively smoking. I tried to give it up sort of at the early stages, and I just was an absolute mess. So I think somebody said to me, you probably do more stress to your body not giving up and just having a few here and there than you do getting in this sort of state every day. Of course, that's probably the wrong advice, and I listened to it and I carried on, and I did smoke, and I again still had a fantastic pregnancy though. There was no issues, they said, that had anything to do with smoking, so I need to get that out of my head, but it's very, very hard not to. So okay, I'm about to give birth really. I had the last day of my office work, and I went into the office, and I remember every lunch break I would go down to the pub with my friend and I have a soda and lime and have some chips and gravy every day. No, I'm not northern. And that is how I put on so much weight, by the way. So me and Leslie, we went down to the pub, we had our normal. As I was walking back from the pub, I said to Leslie, I think I've either just... Hello, okay, so the battery just died on the camera, so I'm kind of just going to grab my phone and finish this. So I was up to the point where me and Leslie had to go to the pub, our standard thing, and I decided, no, I didn't decide, I was walking back to the office as we'd normally do, waddling as I say, because I was pretty damn heavy by this point. And I kind of felt like I just wet myself, and I was getting a bit excited. I didn't say anything to Leslie initially because I didn't want her to freak out. So I got back to the office and I just went to the toilet and I just had a little look, and I could see a bit of mucus and bits and pieces, and I naturally assumed that I'd lost my plug. So I called my midwife, Andreen, who at the time was very anti-hospital. You know, stay as long as you need at home, you know, don't go up there, they're very busy, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, Andreen said, can you come and see me? I said, yes, of course. So when I went to see Andreen, I said, actually, today she hasn't been as active as what she normally is. And I think I've just lost my plug. So Andreen examined me and she said, okay, I think you might be in early labour. So are you having any pains? I said, no contractions. She said, okay, fine. So she sent me up to the hospital in early labour, and she said, bear with them because they are incredibly busy today. I said, okay. So when I arrived, they ushered me to the back room, is the midwifery section part. It was a good hour before a midwife actually came round to see me, and she hooked me up to the fetal movement monitor thingamajigger. And lo and behold, as soon as we were hooked up to that and LAYLA could hear her own heartbeat going quite comfortably, she was kicking me to death. So the movement spikes were completely fine. I waited another hour to 2 hours for the doctor to come round, and she said, right, we're going to examine you. And I said, okay. So she took me into another room and she said, can you cough? And I did, I coughed, and she said, no, I can't see any water. And I said, right. And she said, no, you're not in early labour, you're too soon. She said, you need to go back home and you need to give it a couple more days. And I was like, oh, I was actually devastated. I was thinking to myself, hold on a minute, like the midwife who is anti-hospital, dead against going, like until the very last minute, has sent me up here in early labour, and now you're telling me I've got days. So anyway, Simon had just finished work. He was a little bit behind because he had a meeting, I think. And by the time he got to the hospital, I was ready to go. So we left. And it was that very, very same, obviously that was my last day of work. So we had decided in the meantime that we were going to get some new carpet in the lounge, in the flat. And we needed to paint the lounge, of course, before the carpet was laid. So that was on the Friday. We woke up on the Saturday morning, and I'm not joking, like Simon lifted all the furniture out of the lounge, pretty much to the middle bits if we couldn't sort of get it out. And the whole day, no joke, we spent painting from top to bottom the lounge in prep for the new carpet to be laid. And we done phenomenal. Like, I mean, the difference between me and Size, he was always good at sort of doing the cutting in, and I was the roller. So I'm up, down, up, down, up, down. We stopped for lunch and we stopped for dinner. And I do remember saying to Simon that night, I don't really feel like I felt her move too much today. And he was like, yeah, but you've been up on your feet, you've been painting, blah, blah, blah. And I said, yeah. He said, go and have a bath. He said, lay in the water. He said, put your hands on your tummy and see if you can feel her. I said, okay. So I went and had a bath, and I laid in the bath for a good sort of 20 minutes. And I put my hands on my tummy, and lo and behold, she was kicking. But I was still a bit nervous. So when we finished the bath, I had a machine called a Doppler. And I got the Doppler, put the gel on my tummy, put it straight on there. Straight away, I could hear her heartbeat. Dun, 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 dun. And I was thinking, right, okay. And it did make me feel better. And I always remember we'd ordered Chinese, and we had just subscribed to a film on Sky. I want to say Rock and Roller. I don't even remember what the film is like, but I knew the title. So we sat and we watched the film and we ate our Chinese, and I do remember getting a little bit anxious. And Simon said to me, do you want to go up the hospital? And I said, I don't know. And he said, why don't you know? And I said, because the other day when we went up, I was made to feel as if I was a bit of a nuisance, really, and that things were not really happening. And I think they're just going to say exactly the same as what they did the other day. We're going to be up there for 3-4 hours for no reason. So stupidly, I didn't go. And it's my biggest regret, because the following day, so Sunday, I got up, we finished off the lounge. We went to my mother and father-in-law's for some dinner and sat and played sort of Mario Kart and stuff with them. And I remember saying to Jan, she hasn't been kicking as much. I'm assuming that she's just maybe getting into position, ready to come out. And during this period, I'd had no more fluid, nothing else had come out. So I just naturally assumed that I hadn't lost my waters or my plug, and that things were still rock and rolling. And it was fine. I went to bed that night. I wasn't that nervous or anxious. I felt like everything was okay, but she wasn't kicking as much. It was during that night that she died. I woke up on the Monday morning, so I was getting ready for work, and I just shot out of bed at 7 o'clock in a real panic. And he said, are you all right? What's the matter? And I said, I've got a really bad feeling about this. And he was like, what do you mean? And I said, I just feel like something is wrong. And he said, right, okay. He said, well, look, ring the MB1 at the hospital and see if you can speak to a midwife. So I did. I didn't hesitate. Simon had to go to work because he was going to be late. I rung MB1. I was on hold for ages. Then they cut me off. Then I rung back. This is now 7:30. I've been awake for half an hour, and I'm stressing myself out thinking, oh my God, something's not right. I even said to Simon before he went to work, like, can you try and make her kick? He used to blow raspberries at the bottom of my tummy, and she used to really kick. So I was like, can you just blow a few raspberries? Again, nothing, no movement, no flutters, literally zero. So I then went to ME1 finally after I'd got hold of them, and I drove myself to the hospital. And it was there that they said, look, we are really busy today. We'll see to you in the next half an hour. And I was getting a bit anxious by this point, and I said to the midwife, look, I'm just going to reason with you now. I sat here for 3 hours the other night, and I was made to feel like I was a pest. There is something wrong, and I need to see a midwife now. And the midwife kind of took that on the chin, and she was like, all right, okay. So she ushered me to a bed real quick, and she said, I'm going to just get the heart monitor machine, and I'll be with you in a minute. And then another midwife come along, and she was like a trainee one. I always remember her name. Sue Bell, her name was, because my maiden name is Bell, and my auntie is called Sue. And I always remember that. So Sue Bell, wheeled the trolley along, and she strapped me up, and I started to feel a bit more calmer by that point. And she tried to find the heartbeat, and she looked really puzzled. And I was like, what's wrong? And she was like, oh, no, don't worry. I'm sure it's just me. I'll go and get the head midwife. And I'm thinking, oh God, like, what's going on? So she did. She got the head midwife, and the head midwife come along, and she sat with me, and she said, Emma, don't panic. I'm going to try and see if I can find the heartbeat. Sometimes, when you're this late on in your term or in the pregnancy, they can get into awkward positions and stay there. I said, okay, fine. So she tried again with the Doppler, and nothing. And she said, right, Emma, I still can't find the heartbeat. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you into the side room, which is just down the corridor, and we are going to scan you. And I said, right, what now? And she said, well, we've got a little bit. I said, no. I said, I'm not waiting a second. And I started getting a lot more higher pitched. And she said to me, Emma, you need to calm down. I said, I'm not calming down. You take me in there right now, and you tell me what is going on. So she did. She took me up. We went straight over to the scanning room, and the woman there, I recognised her from my second scan. Oh God, like the monotone of her voice, her hair. And she sat me down, she laid me down, she put the gel on my tummy, and she put the thing on, and she just looked at me, and she just said, Emma, I'm so sorry. And I just remember, oh God, it gives me goosebumps. I just remember laying there thinking, please don't say what I think you're going to say. And I was a little bit in denial, really. She said, I'm afraid there is no heartbeat. She's dead. Unfortunately, we've lost her. And I remember laying there, and I just looked at this woman, and I thought, you're having a bloody laugh, aren't you? I got up, and I just said, no, I don't accept that. I said, get me somebody else. I almost broke the printer, actually, when I was waiting for her to scurry off and go and get another midwife, by which time I think I'd accepted it. My dad then called me, because I think my mum had been on the phone with me in the car on the way up to the hospital, and I'd kind of filled her in on what I was experiencing and what I was feeling and how scared I was. And my dad had rung me because I had to abruptly come to the finish of that call, and he was just checking I was okay. And I just remember screaming down the phone, she's dead. And all I could think about was what I'd done. Like, my obsessive personality was like, why did you have to paint the weekend? Why couldn't you have just sat on your fat bum and just done nothing like most normal pregnant girls at 9 months? Why I had to get that lounge finished is just beyond me. And I do remember the bereavement midwife saying to me, Emma, it's not your fault, because we have women in other countries ploughing fields at 40 weeks. They go into a bush and pop it out and carry on.
And I just remember thinking, no, this was my fault. And I suppose it stuck with me. It was probably no, it was that, because I couldn't control it. But I could control my food and I could control my exercise. And the smaller I got, the better I felt. I thought anyway. And that is the biggest reason why I'm here now. Because no matter what anybody said, not even the post-mortem that showed, didn't even look like a smoker's placenta apparently. She had 10 fingers, 10 toes, and everything was fine. But when I eventually went into labour, which they induced, I had no fluid around her. I had lost my waters the other day when I went in, and they failed to see it. And of course it had been 4 or 5 days since then that I was carrying her with no fluid around her, which apparently leaves you open to infection. And that's where we're at. And I always remember the consultant, Dr. Lim, saying to me, when you fall pregnant again, and you will, come and see me. If there's any issues, if there's any problems, if you feel that you've lost your waters or you've lost your plug, you come and see me and we will sort it straight away. He said, we will scan you and we will see what the deepest pool is around the fluid, and we will make sure that things are done properly. But of course, by that point, she was already dead. I'd lost my baby girl. And even though we've gone on to have JJ, who's a healthy, lovely little boy, I do wish I could have done things differently. But one thing I did do after that was I focused on what I could control. All right, guys.
You and I, we're always on the edge. We fight and make love at the same time.